I walked onto the porch of the $850,000 seaside mansion I just bought for my parents, holding a white chocolate anniversary cake. The salt air usually felt like a hug, but today, it felt like a warning. The front door was wide open. Inside, the air was thick with something foul. My mother was huddled in the corner of the kitchen, her face buried in a dish towel, sobbing. My father stood by the island, his hands trembling so hard he had to grip the counter just to stay upright. Marcus, my sister's husband, was looming over him. He jabbed a finger toward the door and barked, "This is my house now. Get out." Sloane was leaning against the marble countertop, swirling a glass of expensive wine I'd stocked in the cellar. She didn't look up. She just laughed. A sharp, jagged sound that cut through my mother's crying. I didn't scream. I didn't drop the cake. I felt a cold, surgical calm settle over my skin, the kind you get right before you open a chest cavity in the trauma bay. I set the cake down on the table, right next to Marcus's muddy boots. I looked him dead in the eye. "I understand," I said. My voice was flat, empty. Marcus smirked, thinking he'd won. He didn't see the storm coming. I ignored him, and Sloane walked over to my parents and gently took their bags. I led them to my car without looking back, leaving the two of them to celebrate a victory that hadn't officially begun. I'm a 35-year-old ER coordinator. In my line of work, you learn to read a room in seconds. You categorize chaos. You decide who lives and who waits. I've spent the last decade staring at heart monitors and holding the hands of strangers, living on hospital vending machine crackers and stale coffee. I worked 80-hour weeks and slept in the on-call room just to save enough for that house. It wasn't just a building. It was supposed to be a fortress for my parents. A place where they'd never have to worry about a squeaky floor or a late rent check again. As I sat in a cramped hotel room, checking my father's pulse, my hands were as steady as they are during a mass casualty drill. His heart was racing, a frantic drumming against his ribs. He looked at me with eyes full of shame, like he'd failed me because he let Marcus push him around. I didn't tell him it was okay. I just focused on the numbers. I knew exactly what was happening. This wasn't just a sudden takeover. It was a planned hijacking. Sloane had been laying the groundwork for years. My phone used to buzz at 3 a.m. with texts from her. "The kids don't have milk," or "Marcus lost his contract. We're going to be on the street." I'd wire the money every single time. I thought I was being a good sister. I thought I was protecting my nieces. But as I looked at my mother, who was still trembling in her sleep, the truth hit me like a cold front. Sloane didn't need milk. Marcus didn't need a break. They needed a win to cover the $200,000 hole Marcus had dug himself into with day trading. They didn't see our parents as people. They saw them as human shields to hide behind while they squandered my hard-earned life savings. This wasn't a family conflict anymore. It was a rescue mission. And in my world, when a limb is gangrenous, you don't try to save it. You cut it off. The next morning, I returned to that house under the guise of getting my father's heart medication. I needed to see exactly what I was dealing with. I found Sloane in the living room, her phone mounted on a ring light, posing in front of the window with a fake, serene smile. She was recording a video, telling her followers how she'd finally manifested her dream seaside life through hard work and positive energy. The sheer delusion of it made my stomach churn. While she was busy filming her fantasy, I walked into the guest room to pack the last of my parents' things. I opened the top drawer of the nightstand, looking for my father's heirloom watch. It was a gold piece his own father had given him, the only thing of value he truly owned. It wasn't there. I felt a cold sweat prickle my neck. I pulled out my phone and checked a local resale site I'd been monitoring since I saw Marcus's car in the driveway. There it was. My father's watch, listed by Sloane S. for $200. $200 for a piece of our history. She wasn't just stealing a roof. She was pawning off our father's dignity to buy herself another week of pretending to be rich. "What are you doing in here?" Sloane's voice was sharp. She was standing in the doorway, her arms crossed, the mask of the peaceful influencer gone. "I'm getting Dad's medicine," I said, my voice as steady as a heartbeat on a monitor. "And I'm looking for his watch." She sneered. A ugly, twisted expression that showed exactly who she was. That old thing? It was just gathering dust. Consider it a convenience fee for us moving in to take care of them. Besides, Aura, you're just a bank account with a stethoscope. You have plenty of money. Why are you being so greedy over a house you aren't even living in? I didn't argue. I didn't tell her that I'd already seen the listing. I didn't even tell her I was leaving. I just zipped the bag, walked past her, and felt the weight of the master trust documents in my pocket. She thought she was the lead in her own movie. She didn't realize I was already writing the ending. I didn't go to the police yet. I didn't file a report for the stolen watch. In the ER, you don't treat the symptom. You find the source of the hemorrhage. I sat in my car in the driveway, pulled up my phone, and logged into my master utility account. Since I was the only person on the deed of the lifetime trust, every contract for the house was in my name. I didn't just cut the power. That's too easy to fix. Instead, I triggered a maintenance and emergency gas leak alert through the smart home interface. Instantly, the system went into a hard lockout. The lights died. The water valves hissed shut. The Wi-Fi routers blinked out of existence. According to the sensors, the house was now a hazard zone. Through the dark windows, I heard the muffled shouts of Sloane's Airbnb guests. They'd paid thousands for a luxury seaside retreat, and now they were stumbling around in total darkness with no running water. Within 10 minutes, 3 cars were peeling out of the driveway, the guests yelling about chargebacks and 1-star reviews. Sloane's manifested business was hemorrhaging money before my eyes. I drove straight to a small shop on the edge of town. Victor, a locksmith whose life I'd saved after a horrific car accident 3 years ago, was waiting for me. He didn't ask questions. He just handed me a encrypted key fob and a printout of the master trust code. The security company verified your trustee status, Aura, he said, his voice low. The moment you input this code, every other user is wiped. They won't even be able to open the front door with a physical key. He leaned in, his eyes serious. But listen, that brother-in-law of yours? He's been asking around about how to bypass the alarm. I've got a guy keeping an eye on the place tonight. If Marcus tries to break a window, you'll know before he even hits the floor. I thanked him and felt the weight of the fob in my hand. Marcus and Sloane thought they were squatting in a family home. They didn't realize that in the eyes of the law, they were now just glitches in a system I fully controlled. The surgery had begun. I drove back to the house an hour later, flanked by Officer Miller. I'd called in a request for a civil standby, a standard procedure when you need to recover property from a hostile environment. As we pulled into the driveway, the house sat like a dark tomb. No lights, no humming AC, just the sound of the waves. Marcus was pacing the porch, his face slick with sweat. He looked frantic, like a cornered animal. The $200,000 debt was breathing down his neck, and his Airbnb gold mine had just turned into a liability. When he saw me step out of the car, he didn't see the officer at first. He charged down the steps, his chest puffed out, eyes bloodshot. "You think you're smart, Aura?" he roared, his voice cracking. "You think you can just shut us down? We have rights. We've lived here for a week. That makes us tenants." He stepped directly into my personal space, his hand raised as if to shove me. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. I just looked at Officer Miller. Because I had filed that restraining order based on the recorded threats from that morning, Marcus had just committed a felony. The moment his shadow touched mine, Officer Miller moved. It was fast. Surgical. Marcus was spun around, forced against the hood of my car, and handcuffed before he could even finish his sentence. Sloane came running out of the house, screaming about family and betrayal. I didn't say a word to her. I simply handed her a thick envelope. Inside was a confession of judgment. "What is this?" she hissed, her hands shaking as she scanned the legal jargon. "It's the end of your little business, Sloane," I said. "I've already notified the IRS about your unregistered rental income. That document confirms that every dollar you took from those guests is being legally diverted to the trust to cover the property taxes you tried to evade. You didn't manifest a lifestyle. You manifested a federal audit." Neighbors were peeking through their curtains, watching the perfect couple get escorted to the curb in the back of a squad car. The silence that followed was the most beautiful thing I'd heard in years. 1 week later, the dust hadn't just settled. It had been swept away. I sat in my car at a gas station 10 miles outside of town, watching a small blue dot pulse on my phone screen. The AirTag Sloane had hidden in the lining of my trunk was doing exactly what I wanted it to do. She thought she was tracking me to a secluded spot where she and Marcus could corner me for one last family talk, which was really just a desperate attempt at extortion. I led her on a quiet chase, looping through the back roads until I pulled into the parking lot of the county sheriff's office. I didn't even get out of the car. I just watched in the rearview mirror as Sloane's beat-up SUV screeched in behind me. She jumped out, her face twisted in a mask of righteous fury, ready to scream. She didn't notice the 3 deputies standing by the entrance until they were surrounding her vehicle. She was arrested on the spot for felony stalking and attempted extortion. As they led her away, she looked at me through the glass, her mouth moving in a silent plea of, "Why?" I didn't answer. I just rolled up my window. The day-trading debt collectors weren't my problem anymore. They were hers. And since Marcus was already sitting in a cell awaiting his hearing for violating the restraining order, the silence in my life was finally absolute. I drove back to the mansion. The salt air felt clean again. I watched Victor, my locksmith friend, finish installing the new biometric scanners. He gave me a thumbs up and handed me the master override. I walked inside and found my parents on the porch, sitting in the two rockers I'd bought them. My father's hands were still. My mother wasn't clutching a dish towel like a white flag. She was holding a book. I sat down between them, listening to the waves hit the cliffs below. For the first time in 10 years, my phone didn't buzz with a fake emergency. I pulled up my contact list, found Sloane's name, and hit delete. I wasn't the family bank anymore. I was just a daughter who had finally brought her parents home. The court proceedings weren't the explosion I expected. They were a slow, cold burn. Sloane was sentenced to 6 years in state prison, with eligibility for parole after 4. For a string of charges including felony stalking and financial exploitation, Marcus fared even worse. Because of his prior record and the violation of the restraining order, he received 8 years. The court ordered them to pay a combined restitution of $142,000 every penny they'd skimmed from the house and the Airbnb guests. The social fallout was swifter than the legal one. Our aunt, the one who usually stays quiet, posted the body cam footage of the arrest on the family Facebook group. The community that Sloane had spent years grooming with fake manifestation posts turned on her overnight. Her friends didn't just stop liking her photos. They publicly disowned her. By the time the news hit the local paper, the high of them had lost the only thing they ever truly valued: their reputation. 3 months into her sentence, a letter arrived at the seaside house. The envelope was stamped with the prison logo. I sat on the porch, the salt air cool against my skin, and opened it. It was 10 pages of Sloane's messy handwriting, filled with the same old poison. "I did it for the family," she wrote. "You were always the cold one, Aura. You chose money over your own flesh and blood. Mom and Dad are miserable without me. And that's on your conscience." A year ago, that letter would have kept me awake for a week. I would have drafted a 20-page rebuttal, citing every dollar I'd ever given her. But as I sat there, I realized I felt nothing. No anger, no guilt, just an immense sense of boredom. I didn't finish reading it. I didn't even show it to my parents. I walked over to the fire pit we'd installed on the deck, dropped the pages into the center, and watched the orange flames turn her lies into gray ash. Silence is the only language a narcissist can't twist. My life looks different now. My family has grown, but not by blood. It's Victor, who comes over every Sunday to check the locks and stay for my mother's pancakes. It's Officer Miller, who stopped by during his patrol just to make sure my father's garden is thriving. It's the nurses I work with, who finally convinced me to take a real vacation a week where I didn't check my phone once. The air in the seaside house is light now, stripped of the heaviness of unearned debt. I'm Aura, and I finally learned the hardest lesson of all. Blood doesn't make you family. Loyalty does. We are taught from birth that family is everything. But that's a lie used by predators to keep their victims in line. You are allowed to walk away from people who hurt you, even if you share a last name. Trust is not a birthright. It is a currency that must be earned through respect. If you are the one in your family who always fixes things, the one who pays the bills while they throw the tantrums, listen to me. You are not their bank. You are not their scapegoat. And you are certainly not the emergency exit they get to pull after they set their own lives on fire. You are allowed to be happy. You are allowed to be precise. And most importantly, you are allowed to say no and never look back. If this story reminded you that it's time to set a boundary, share this with someone who needs the strength to say no. Don't forget to subscribe for more tales of justice. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are asking, why did she wait so long? Or why did she wire all that money in the first place? It feels like Aura was a doormat, right? But before you judge her, let's talk about what was actually happening beneath the surface. Because if you don't understand the mechanics of this trap, you might fall into it yourself. In psychology, we call what Aura went through the slot machine effect. Think about it. Why do people keep pulling the lever at a casino even when they are losing their life savings? It is because of intermittent reinforcement. Every once in a while, Sloane probably gave Aura a win, a thank you, a picture of the nieces, or a rare moment of sisterly love. Aura wasn't being stupid. She was addicted to those crumbs of hope. She kept hoping that if she just wired one more $1,000, the machine would finally pay out and she would get the family she deserved. But as we saw, the only way to win with a broken machine is to walk away. Aura's survival didn't start with a lawyer. It started when she stopped treating her sister's emergencies as her own obligations. Now, let's look at the street-smart financial defense Aura used. She stopped playing the emotional game and started playing the data game. First, she used what I call the audit strategy. When Sloane claimed the house was hers, Aura didn't argue feelings. She checked the resale sites and tracked the utility bills. Scammers and toxic relatives thrive in the gray area of vague promises. The moment you bring in specific details, numbers, and timestamps, their story falls apart. Second, she understood the buyout. Sometimes, the money you lose in a conflict isn't a loss. It is the freedom tax. By letting the IRS handle the unregistered income and using the trust documents to divert the Airbnb profits, she didn't just get revenge, she invested in her own peace. She realized that $85,000, or even $200,000, is a small price to pay to never have to speak to a predator again. Finally, she followed the golden rule of survival: building the case. She didn't call the police until she had the recording, the restraining order, and the civil standby ready. She didn't give Marcus a chance to lie his way out. The verdict is simple. Your bank account should never be more accessible than your boundaries. If you are the person in your family who fixes everything, remember that you are allowed to be the one who breaks the cycle. You are not an insurance policy for people who refuse to grow up. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to pay a freedom tax to get away from a toxic situation? Drop your story in the comments. Your experience might be the wake-up call someone else needs to hear. And if you want to learn how to defend your peace in your pocketbook, hit that subscribe button. We deal in justice here, and the first step to justice is knowing your worth.